While searching for the individual I was scheduled to meet, I observed my former spouse, Susan, accompanied by an individual of average build, exhibiting indications of overweight. The man appeared to be of advanced age. He seemed to have been in relatively good physical condition in the past, but his current state suggested that he had enjoyed a relatively indulgent lifestyle. Susan appeared genuinely pleased to be seated next to him. The man exuded a sense of affluence, and memories of our shared history resurfaced as I stood in the entranceway. Despite the 3-year interval since our divorce, the memories were still vivid, as though they had occurred only recently. Instead of accompanying her, I found myself observing from a distance. Ultimately, however, she appeared content with the outcome. My difficulties began when I traveled to Albany for a meeting with a client. I had planned to stay overnight to avoid a lengthy return journey, but my arrangements were disrupted. Upon embarking on the journey, the client contacted me to inform me that his vehicle had sustained damage, yet he was unharmed. He expressed remorse for cancelling at such a late hour, and I reassured him that it was acceptable and suggested we reschedule. However, I was not prepared for the additional 2 hours of driving I had committed to when I promised my wife a romantic dinner when I returned home an hour and a half later. Upon finally turning onto my street, I observed 3 unfamiliar vehicles parked in my driveway. Given that my wife frequently hosts friends when I am absent, I initially attributed this to such social gatherings. I parked on the street and proceeded inside, assuming everything was normal. However, upon noticing 4 sets of clothes scattered across the living room floor, I immediately recognized the situation as anomalous. Upon entering the room, I immediately discerned that something was amiss. My wife's passionate outbursts were not cries for assistance, rather, they were expressions of desire for more profound intimacy. I experienced a profound sense of disappointment and disbelief. Despite my reservations, I recognized that I had to confront the reality of the situation. Upon reaching the top of the stairs, I heard my wife making loud noises. I quietly looked into the bedroom and observed 3 men I did not know. 2 of them were unfamiliar to me, but I recognized the third as Jeff Davis, my wife's boss from work. I was taken aback to witness them engaging in intimate behavior with my wife. My feelings towards Jeff intensified as he showered her with praise and disgust. I was further disconcerted to observe that this individual was exploiting my wife for his own advantage. All 3 participants treated her with a lack of respect and behaved in a manner that suggested they were the sole arbiters of her actions. This was in stark contrast to the woman I had known for the previous 10 years. Given the duration of my marriage, I was inclined to concur with Jeff's disparaging portrayal of my wife, who he described as acquiescing passively. I proceeded downstairs without attracting attention, seeking solace in my office. I retrieved my digital video camera, which still had sufficient battery power, and discovered an old holiday cassette inside. My intention was to document the incident for legal purposes. My wife's actions were documented for legal reasons, not to create a sensational spectacle. The camera was positioned by the bedroom door, capturing images of my wife's face and the other individuals involved. After approximately 510 minutes of footage had been recorded, I found myself unable to continue viewing the material due to the overwhelming emotional distress it caused. While some may find such a scene titillating, I experienced only profound sadness and distress. I experienced a sense of betrayal and a feeling of being completely defeated. I proceeded to return to the downstairs area to attempt to gather my thoughts in my office. I retrieved my weapon from the safe and removed the safety mechanism as a precautionary measure, despite my inclination towards non-violence. I felt the necessity to protect myself in the event of an escalation of the situation. I proceeded to enter the living room. I then proceeded to retrieve the car keys and wallets from the pockets of the pants that had been scattered across the floor. I proceeded to deflate the tires of all the cars that were parked outside, including Sue's vehicle. Upon returning inside, I observed a grin spreading across my face as I formulated a plan that I was confident would be effective, provided that Sue had her cellular phone with her. I observed the phone on the bedside table while I was recording, so I retrieved my camera and positioned myself discreetly behind the stairs. After several attempts to contact her with no response, I finally reached her on the phone. The house was silent, indicating that she had warned the others to remain quiet. Sue was out of breath when she asked, "Hey Bobby, how's Albany?" I could hear the men in the room chuckling softly. "Tired. Everything okay?" I feigned concern. Yeah, I just had to rush upstairs for a call. My client cancelled, so I'll be home soon. Want to grab dinner? I inquired in a calm tone, despite my mounting anxiety. I'll be ready in a minute, she replied, her voice betraying her nervousness. I will see you soon, she said, her voice betraying a sense of urgency as she abruptly ended the call. I was left with a sense of foreboding, aware of what was about to transpire in just a minute. As anticipated, 4 individuals, completely naked, began descending the stairs into the living room. The men hastily donned their clothes and Sue, too, hurriedly fixed herself up. They all rushed out, and Sushi donned shoes and a jacket and gazed outside, hoping they would depart before she did. Had she been less excited, she might have noticed my vehicle parked on the street. The men began speaking at the same time, so she stepped onto the porch to listen. At that moment, I closed and locked the front door behind her. My wife observed my countenance for a fleeting moment as I closed the door, attempting to engage her in conversation through the side window. However, it was too late for verbal communication. The other men promptly returned to my porch, vigorously striking the front door, thereby indicating their intention to retrieve their belongings. Upon recognizing the gravity of the situation, I promptly contacted the emergency services, reporting an attempted break-in. The dispatcher informed me that a neighbor had already contacted the authorities. I provided my name and address and awaited the arrival of the police, who arrived within 2 minutes. After questioning my wife, I approached the 2 officers and informed them that my wife had been mistreated by the men present and that I believed their arrest was warranted. This prompted a strong reaction from the men, who began yelling that they were invited and that my wife was aware of and consented to the situation. Everyone, including me, looked at Sue, waiting for her to respond. She avoided eye contact and admitted, in a quiet voice, that she was aware of the situation. She expressed shame that she invited the men over, got close with them, and was not mistreated. She asserted that it was her choice. The men seemed relieved to not be facing charges for mistreatment. Soon after, 2 more police cars arrived and they took down everyone's names for their report. The head cop then spoke with me. He stated that since my wife invited these men and they were all adults, there was not much that could be done legally. He suggested counseling or something similar, saying it with a disapproving look at my wife. I instructed the police to call a taxi and informed them that Mrs. Thomas could not return to the house. Subsequently, one of the men called for a taxi after discovering that their tires were flat. Additionally, they attempted to accuse me of taking their belongings. However, I informed the police that their allegations were unfounded. I proceeded to walk back to the porch, where Sue was still in the company of the men, until the taxi arrived. I stood there, experiencing a complex emotional state. Despite my initial anger, my wife approached me with courage. She was unaware of my intense anger or of the fact that I was armed with a magnum. Had she been aware of these factors, she might have retreated. My wife expressed remorse, but I swiftly cut her off. She had caused me profound emotional distress, and I was unwilling to forgive her. Jeff had referred to her in a derogatory manner. In all honesty, I believe this is an appropriate course of action moving forward. I will henceforth refer to you by that name and refrain from using your real name. If you wish to communicate with me, you may do so through Tad. With that, I returned to the house and secured the door behind me, leaving her outside. She rejoined the group, sobbing, and Jeff attempted to console her. He was pushed away, which, in a curious way, made me feel somewhat better. However, this feeling did not last long. When I returned to my bedroom, I noticed a distinct odor, indicating that they had been together. This made me even angrier. I became enraged and began to destroy the entire room. I pulled the mattress out and threw it on the. I proceeded to the front lawn, where I retrieved my toolbox from the garage and disassembled the bed, discarding the pieces outside. I returned to the bedroom and retrieved Sue's phone from the floor, accessing her contacts and messages. I discovered emails, images, and videos of a sexual nature involving men and Sue, which made it apparent that she was aware of these individuals. I reflected on my previous attentiveness towards her, recognizing that those days were now behind me. I proceeded to take all the boxes from our bedroom downstairs and organize their contents into separate piles on the front lawn. Subsequently, I proceeded to dispose of her belongings from the guest room. As I relocated each drawer from the dresser to the exterior, I discovered an unexpected item. The final drawer, situated at the bottom of the dresser, appeared to be obstructed. I applied a considerable amount of force to dislodge it, and after some time, the drawer finally opened. I discovered that the obstruction was comprised of 7 or 8 DVDs which had been concealed beneath the surface. In the process of removing the DVDs, I inadvertently damaged one of the cases, but the disc itself remained intact. As I observed the DVDs, I experienced a renewed sense of distress. I had not anticipated feeling any worse, yet I did. I proceeded to the titles on the DVDs were particularly distressing to observe in the living room setting. I proceeded to organize the DVDs on shelves for closer examination. The initial DVD depicted Sue with her friend Sarah at Sarah's residence. Sue was known to frequently assist with Sarah's events in Avon, typically on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The footage appeared to depict Sue engaging in intimate interactions with multiple individuals at her residence. I continued to observe the footage for an extended period, until tears filled my eyes. I ceased observation only after viewing the final 2 DVDs. The first DVD depicted Sue with her tennis instructor, a service she had paid for. She had scheduled lessons every Saturday and appeared to be visibly fatigued upon returning home. For subsequent intimacy, which was a logical progression. The second DVD depicted Sue engaging in intimate acts at her place of work, specifically in the boardroom with Jeff, her superior, and Jeff's superior, Bill Evans. Bill was a prominent figure in the community, frequently featured in the news for his philanthropic endeavors, which I subsequently realized extended to my wife's private life. I retrieved a large envelope and meticulously placed a cellular telephone, the DVDs, and a cassette tape I had recorded earlier within. My intention was to present I then placed the entire envelope in the hands of my lawyer and close friend, Ted Worth, with whom I have entrusted matters of this nature for a number of years. Having completed this task, I proceeded to examine the contents of Sue's computer, which I found to be in a state of disarray. I proceeded to copy all files, emails, photos, and videos onto external drives, a process which took approximately an hour to complete. I then began to review my wife's digital records, where I discovered videos bearing resemblance to those I had previously observed on the DVDs. Additionally, I came across a number of explicit images, the likes of which one might typically encounter upon further examination of the digital evidence. I discovered a series of emails dating back 6 months, despite her attempts to conceal them through the use of obfuscating nomenclature. These emails revealed communication between my wife and Jeff, as well as several other individuals. Additionally, there were emails between her and Sarah, which were recently unearthed. Initially, I chose to disregard these emails, but one in particular resonated with me deeply. I contemplated utilizing my magnum to obtain the evidence, but ultimately decided against it. The email that had the most significant impact on me was the one from Sue to Sarah. In it, Sue expressed her confusion regarding Sarah's actions. She had not left me to be single again and requested that Sue describe her ideal future husband. Here is what she said. Sarah, I no longer care about him. Bobby is faithful, but foolish. I fear he will soon discover my secret life. He is not entirely unaware, but love blinds him. Lately, he has been gaining weight, and his growing belly is a turn-off compared to other men I have been with. He also lacks certain personal grooming habits, such as beards and mustaches, which I find unappealing. I used to love him a great deal, but the excitement of recent years is too tempting to give up. I have always held a great deal of affection for him, but the allure of recent events is simply too strong to relinquish. His lawyer, Jeff, and colleague Bill have both made suggestive remarks regarding potential promotions and perks. I find these suggestions amusing. Additionally, I have my sights set on acquiring a house and a vehicle. If I am able to navigate the situation skillfully, I could potentially receive alimony on a monthly basis. Furthermore, I am eagerly anticipating our Tuesday gathering once I have recovered from my tennis injury. Tony is an exceptional individual. I request that you ensure I receive the video from last Thursday. It was my inaugural experience with a multitude of males simultaneously. With regard to my ideal partner, he would be affluent, devoted, submissive, and not excessively intelligent. He would cater to my every whim while still inquiring about my preferences. I find this amusing. I am not particularly concerned about sexual intimacy, provided financial compensation is involved. I find this amusing. At times, it seems too effortless. I am disconcerted by Bobby's recent actions. I must proceed. I will contact you on Tuesday. I found her behavior revolting. Over the previous few years, had she truly held such negative views of me? Was my love for her so blind that she had been unfaithful to me for over 2 years? After that, I retired to bed but was unable to sleep and ended up resting on the couch. The following morning, I was too tired to get up and went to work. I called in sick and contacted my close friend and lawyer, Ted Worth, Mary. Ted's secretary answered the phone. I had known her for almost as long as Ted. I requested an urgent meeting but was told that Mary informed Ted that I required an urgent meeting in his office. She instructed me to mention Tammy Brown's name if he became uncooperative. I agreed and said I would see him in an hour. I then terminated the call as I was preparing to leave for the meeting. My phone rang, but I was reluctant to speak with Sue. I checked the caller ID and saw that it was an unknown number. I answered, thinking it might be Ted calling me back. "Hello, Mr. Thomas. This is Bill Evans from Susan's office. I would like to request a meeting in your office to discuss the events that transpired at your residence the previous night. I believe it would be beneficial for all parties involved to convene today to clarify the situation. I am uncertain as to whether he was aware of the video footage of him with my wife at the workplace. I sensed that he was concerned about maintaining Jeff Davis's valuable clientele, including my wife and Jeff, as they were instrumental to his business. Additionally, he was likely anxious about the potential negative publicity that could affect his company and personal reputation. Evans, I have an important meeting this morning, but I will call you back on this number before noon to set something up for today." I informed him in a calm and collected manner. I made it sound like he was negotiating with me. He was in for a surprise when I stepped outside. It appeared to be a peculiar yard sale. There was the broken bed and Sue's clothes still scattered around. An older neighbor waved at me, looking curious. I knew I would be the topic of conversation in the neighborhood, as they say. The news was a significant development in both the suburban and downtown areas. I procured a quick meal before proceeding directly to Ted's office. Mary prepared a cup of coffee with a generous amount of cream and no sugar. Ted and I have a long-standing relationship. Bobby, I am uncertain of the circumstances surrounding Tad, but I was instructed to clear his schedule for today. I could benefit from a temporary leave of absence. She added, "If you are interested in learning more about Tammy Brown, you will have to inquire with Ted." He said he would be there immediately, however, he had to reschedule his meeting with the judge for today's court hearing. At that moment, he entered the room. "Bobby Tammy Brown, you must be in significant trouble for mentioning that name to me. Please come into the office and let's talk." "Mary H., I will not be connecting you to anyone for now." Ted quickly said, "I will take notes," and he closed the door to ensure privacy. I informed him about what occurred the night before. I proceeded to share the information I had uncovered regarding Sue's new lifestyle. I then provided him with the evidence I had gathered, which he perused meticulously, without interruption. It was evident that Ted was contemplating the legal ramifications of the situation as he processed the events of the previous night. I also informed him of Bill Evans's desire to meet with me that day. "Bobby, let us concentrate on the matters at hand. I have known you for a considerable period, and I am aware. You're really hurt. Is there any chance you and Sue could work things out?" he inquired of Ted. "If it were Katie, your wife, and you who had discovered those videos and emails, you would undoubtedly seek a divorce. However, I also want to retaliate. I am not simply going to remain silent and tolerate this betrayal. I will take legal action against Tony and the tennis club. Sarah is merely a friend, but Sue's workplace is a viable target. Secondly, we will sue the two. The clients and their companies who were at your house will also be pursued by Jeff Davis and Bill Evans and their respective teams. Ted warned me that the situation might deteriorate further before it improves. He informed me of this, but I am indifferent to the potential for further difficulties. I am prepared to take physical action if necessary. My objective is to hold these individuals accountable for their actions through Sue." I stated angrily, "All right, Bobby, remind me what Bill Evans wanted, and we will proceed accordingly." Ted said, "We have considered a few options and I believe the last one is the best. A direct attack on Sue's workplace seemed the optimal course of action. I had evidence in the form of videos of Davis Evans and Sue in their boardroom. Ted explained that they had influence over Sue in her professional capacity, but that it could result in significant legal difficulties. I considered this a promising strategy. Ted also suggested that once Bill Evans saw the evidence, he might reconsider and offer a settlement of less than $2 million. I was adamant. "You know what," I said. "Make it $2.5 million, I stated. "I've previously observed your legal expenses." I joked, "Please come over tonight at 7 p.m. Katie will prepare us a superb dinner. You could benefit from a respite from home." I promptly arranged a meeting with Bill Evans for 2 p.m. Subsequently, Mary made an appearance in the office. "Ted, they are calling on line 1, she informed him. "Mary," I said. "No calls," he replied, visibly irritated. "Sorry, Ted, but it's Susan. She wants to speak with you," Mary said, attempting to defuse the situation. "Mary, it's going to be a long day, and it's just getting started." "Does she know Bobby is here?" he asked, his tone implying that he was not aware of this. "Tell her I'll talk to her in a minute," he said, his tone more calm as Mary left for the reception area. "I suspect she's already realized that her phone, computer, and DVD collection are missing. I imagine she was upset when I placed her belongings, including our bed, on the front lawn." "You had a busy evening," he continued. "I'll handle this call, and please don't interrupt. I must interject and clarify a few points at this juncture." He informed me, picking up the call, that I was overhearing one side of the conversation. However, I could discern the essence of her remarks to Ted without hearing the actual words. "Hello, Susan. This is Ted. Yes, I have already spoken with him. Bobby is a commendable individual, and I consider him to be a friend. I am surprised that you would betray him instead of supporting him. No excuses, Sue. I'm not in the mood to engage in this discussion. Yes, I will represent him. He has compelling arguments. You are aware that this will be an unpleasant experience. I will speak with him, but you have irreparably damaged a man who was always loyal and deeply loved. I doubt he even cares about your opinion now. My advice is to find yourself a competent lawyer." Yes, Bill Evans set up a meeting for 2:00 p.m. However, I advise against going to listen to the conversation outside the office door. Doing so could result in Bobby leaving, which would undoubtedly exacerbate the situation. It would be prudent to wait and remain calm today. While it is true that he placed your belongings on the lawn, it is important to remember that just as you have the right to invite people into your bedroom, he also has the right to remove your belongings from the house. It is surprising that he did not resort to violence last night. While he did have a weapon, it was for protection. It should be recalled that he believed you were in danger. This is corroborated by the police report. It is possible that, were it my wife Katie, I might be in jail right now. It seems likely that he acted out of anger given the situation. As for your computer, phone, and any other missing items, you will need to speak with the owner of the house may have left the items on the lawn with your clothes and someone may have taken them. I have dealt with all the paperwork for the house and you both have the same rights. It is up to each of you how you want to use those rights. Ted said he would tell him right away and warned Sue firmly to stay where she was and let Bobby stay in the house until things were sorted out, as it was not safe for her to be there with him right now. Then, he told Sue not to push it and admitted that he was tempted to strike her in the nose. He instructed her to remain with Sarah and stated that he would contact her lawyer once they had been retained. Tez would not influence Ted's position. He was not merely Bobby's legal advisor but also his friend. He made it clear that her Tez would not influence him and that he could be firm when necessary. This was one of those instances in which he regretted that she would see him, usually reserved for his enemies, and warned her that Ted then informed Sue to refrain from contacting Bobby and to remain in her office for the time being, as he was not interested in engaging with her. Ted inquired if I had understood the majority of his conversation, and I replied that I had. I informed my friend that I wished to confront her in person and express my true feelings, but I admitted that I was not yet prepared to face her again. Ted then requested a few items from Bobby. Ted's demeanor shifted to a more positive and hopeful tone. He gestured for me to retrieve the videotapes from the envelope. I retrieved the tapes from last night, which featured Tony at the tennis club, as well as footage of Sue with Mr. Davis and Mr. Evans in her office. After handing him the tapes, Ted suggested I invite Mary to join me for lunch. I expressed my confusion, and he responded with a puzzled look. I believe it would be preferable for me to review the tapes independently to avoid any additional distress before our meeting at 2 p.m. Furthermore, I believe that viewing this material would be detrimental to your well-being at this time. I am reluctant to have you distressed before our meeting with Bill Evans. I concurred with his counsel and expressed gratitude before disclosing the positive developments to Mary. She gestured that I should take her to a fine dining establishment if Ted was covering the cost. We both found this amusing and proceeded to leave. Mary was an excellent companion during dinner, and for the subsequent hour, she assisted me in diverting my attention. Upon our return, we heard Ted cheering as we entered the office. He was in an excellent mood. He was visibly jubilant, performing a brief celebratory gesture at his workstation. These recordings, he asserted, represented a profound shift in circumstances. "It's incredible," he said, his tone imbued with enthusiasm. My expression, however, reflected a complex mixture of emotions, and it seemed that he was finally grasping the depth of my realization. "I'm truly sorry," I began. "I didn't fully comprehend the significance of these videos." I proceeded to convey my understanding of the pain that Sue's actions had caused. "I was simply elated about what I discovered," he replied, his sincerity evident in his voice. "Ted requested my presence," I informed him. "I'm coming over to show you something." I moved behind him to view the screen. "Did you view the entire video?" he inquired. "At the tennis club with Sue?" he inquired. "I did not see the entirety of the video. I viewed only a portion of it last night." It was challenging to view the video without experiencing negative emotions. I admitted. "Please prepare yourself for this." Toward the conclusion of the video, Tony and Sue draw the attention of a small group of men in the men's locker room. This occurs at the tennis club's locker room. I regret to inform you that she permitted the other men who were observing to join in after Tony. I am not disclosing this information to cause distress. I am sharing it to demonstrate the actions of this individual, whom I will refer to as Ted EXP. Ted EXP explained, pointing at the screen on his. The man in question was an older gentleman, wrapped in a towel with long grey hair and a prominent mustache. He inquired as to whether I recognized him. Ted proceeded to play the video, which revealed the man dropping his towel to reveal a sizable endowment. The issue, however, was that he proceeded to approach my wife with immediate familiarity. In the subsequent moment, she was encircled by 5 other men, visibly eager for their turn. I recounted to Ted, "I must profess my ignorance regarding this gentleman's identity, yet I assume you are more informed." He proceeded to provide me with a detailed account of his plan, which he had devised in anticipation of our meeting at the tennis club at 16 Nassau. I was initially taken aback by the sheer audacity of his proposal, but I was also gratified to see that, in addition to being my friend, Ted was also an accomplished lawyer. I was therefore pleased to have him on my side in this endeavor. After leaving his office, we proceeded to downtown, carrying with us a portable DVD player, a number of printed photographs and legal envelopes. Upon reaching Sue's building, we proceeded to Bill Evans's office, which was located on the top floor, with Sue's office situated 1 floor below. After a period of waiting in the reception area, we were eventually led in. Upon entering Mr. Evans's office, I became aware of a presence observing me from the hallway. I glanced over and observed a woman, who then disappeared around the corner. I surmised that she was not a party to the meeting and that I would not have to interact with her today. We proceeded into Bill's office, which was furnished with sophisticated furnishings and adorned with plaques, awards, and photographs of him with notable individuals. I was curious whether he ever brought Sue to this office. At that moment, I developed an even stronger negative opinion of Mr. Evans. I introduced Ted and I proceeded to take control of the conversation. "Good morning, Mr. Evans. This is my colleague, Ted Worth, who is here for the meeting you arranged today." I informed Bill as we shook hands that I had assumed this was to be a private meeting between you and me. Prior to the meeting, I informed Mr. Evans that I would like to speak with him alone. However, I also requested that he bring along Jeff Davis, as the matter in question also concerned him. After a brief pause, Mr. Evans pressed the intercom button and requested that Jeff come to his office immediately. He explained that the matter was urgent and that Jeff would be there shortly. While we waited for Jeff's arrival, I apologized to Mr. Evans for the difficulties caused by Jeff and Sue. I acknowledged that the previous night had been challenging, but I expressed my hope that, by working together, we could find a solution that would benefit all parties involved. Every individual present, Bill began, with an air of optimism. "What do you mean precisely, Mr. Evans?" I inquired, awaiting Jeff's arrival. "I care a great deal about your wife, Sue," Bill continued, but Jeff suddenly entered, cutting him off. It seemed as though he might depart, but Bill urged him to stay. Jeff, seemingly reluctant, took a seat, averting his gaze from me. "I wish to state that I care for Sue deeply, almost as if she were my own daughter," he began, but Ted interjected, "Are you implying that you have a proclivity for inbreeding?" "I am not suggesting that," Mr. Evans replied, taken aback by the question. I let out a quiet chuckle. Ted's inquiry prompted Bill to clarify his previous statement. "Do I have some peculiar affinity for inbreeding?" he asked. Ted responded with apparent offense, asserting that the notion was absurd. "You know what they say, a picture paints 1,000 words," he said, placing a DVD player on Bill's desk. Ted proceeded to hand over screenshots from a video to Jeff, who then passed them to Bill. Jeff's eyes widened as he transferred the images to Bill, who was clearly identified in the footage alongside my wife. The images clearly showed Bill and Jeff with my wife, indicating that Bill recognized his own boardroom table where he and Sue had their encounters. "Jeff, are you seriously saying you recorded this on video and shared copies?" Bobby inquired as to whether she would require it, and she appeared to integrate well into the environment. He then informed Bill, gesturing subtly towards Sue, who remained in her position, and Jeff, who was visibly shocked. Thirdly, he stated that they anticipated a fair monetary offer and that they would consider his initial proposal and respond within 5 business days. If necessary, they would commence legal proceedings within 2 months. Tad then initiated the video recording before they could interrupt, directing Bill to view the screen. The video showed both men with my wife in their boardroom on numerous occasions. Jeff was not required to view it, given his involvement in recording it. Bill simply stared with his mouth open, indicating that he was contemplating how to salvage his business reputation, family, and finances. I could discern that he was considering the most expedient course of action. After the other 2 men departed, Jeff and I discussed his employment status. I informed him that I would consult with my legal counsel regarding a potential settlement that might satisfy him. Both men were aware of the potential consequences of this incident becoming public knowledge. "We will maintain your confidentiality until we receive a formal proposal from you. However, we advise against terminating Mr. Diaz's employment at this time, as he may possess additional copies of the video, which could afford him significant leverage. If we fail to navigate this situation correctly, both of you could face legal ramifications for engaging with an employee, which would have repercussions for your professional standing." Tad cautioned them as we prepared to depart. He retrieved the DVD player and photographs we had brought with us. We left just as Bill and Jeff appeared poised to engage in a private discussion. I had a question for Tad, but he signaled for us to wait until we were outside. I had not observed Sue attempting to eavesdrop on our conversation, situated as she was around the corner. However, the final thing I heard was Mr. Evans instructing Julie to bring S.U. Thomas to him without delay via the intercom. I smiled, anticipating what would transpire next. Bill would soon become aware of the situation. Once we were outside, I inquired as to why he had provided Jeff with an avenue of escape by suggesting he utilize his own video footage to incriminate Bill. Ted elucidated that it was preferable for them to be divided and conquered. He explained that it was more advantageous for them to operate independently, each pursuing their own objectives. They are therefore pursuing their own interests, which means that if Bill does not offer sufficient compensation, we can play them off against each other. Tad also made the perceptive observation that Jeff and Bill have families and attend church, despite the evidence presented in the videos. They are not yet prepared to challenge the status quo at home, and we left the building. I realized that this would now be remembered as the place where my wife betrayed me, rather than the place where she worked. This made me sad to think about Ted's words, which brought me back to reality. "Of course," I replied. "Let's grab a beer before we head to the tennis club at 4 p.m. We both could benefit from a beverage, and I have a matter that I wish to discuss with you, although I am not yet certain of the specifics." Ted stated as we drove towards the tennis club. We pulled into a quaint bar and restaurant adjacent to the tennis club, and Ted ordered 2 beers before beginning the Bobby, I believe Bill Evans will make an offer that is likely to be just below $1 million. I am acquainted with his legal team from another case, and they are astute. Additionally, he is pragmatic. Tomorrow, I will contact him to inform him that a low offer will not be well received by his client, either for business or personal reasons. In light of these considerations, I will propose a figure of approximately $3 million, or alternatively, advise that we decline the offer and withdraw from further negotiations. Ted also informed me that I should ascertain whether, in the event that the offers are rejected, you would be amenable to my portraying Susan in a less than favorable light. As your legal counsel, it is my duty to pursue any and all avenues to secure a favorable outcome in court, even if it entails portraying her in a negative light. This could potentially lead to a highly contentious and widely publicized legal battle. I will utilize every legal strategy at my disposal to achieve victory in this case. However, it is crucial to recognize that the course of action may lead to the revelation of some uncomfortable truths about Sue, your marriage, and even your personal life. Have you considered this possibility? I informed Ted that I had considered the matter at length and believed I had more integrity than they assumed. I stated that I was prepared to proceed if necessary, but I preferred to begin by exploring the financial offer route. I indicated this to Ted, who concurred and proposed initiating discussions with Bill. He assured me that if the terms were unsatisfactory, he would promptly handle all the necessary paperwork. Additionally, he mentioned leveraging his connections in the media to obtain footage or images, even if they had to be censored. The explicit sections indicated by blue bars are similar to those seen on television. Ted, you have consistently been a reliable source of support and guidance. I regret the unfortunate circumstances that have arisen. Being unaware of the situation was preferable to being publicly disgraced by an unfaithful spouse. However, I am supportive of your decision to take action. Whatever is needed, I did not initiate this situation, but I am resolved to bring it to a swift conclusion. I expressed my frustration, and I understand, Bobby. There is no issue. Let us discuss our next meeting. The individual in question is Mr. Harry Ryle, proprietor of the tennis club. I am certain you recall him from the video in my office. He appears to be amenable to a hands-on approach. He adopted an indifferent stance, asserting that adults would act according to their own volition and that he would refrain from intervening. He may even temporarily relieve Tony's tennis coach of his duties, ostensibly to maintain appearances, but then reinstate him later. Tony enjoys considerable popularity at the club, particularly among the female members. It is important to remember, Bobby, that while the majority of members are men, women are also important members of the club. This will be crucial in how you deal with Mr. Ryle. Ted briefed me on the situation. The information was received at a fortuitous moment, and it was evident that Mr. Ryle and Thad were not compatible. From the outset, they exhibited a palpable animosity. Mr. Ryle made a definitive statement, effectively bringing the meeting to a close. Mr. Ryle then introduced me to Bob Thomas, indicating that his wife was a member of the club. I learned that Tony Simba, Mr. Thomas's wife's tennis coach, was involved in an incident. I inquired about the club's plan of action regarding this matter. I was awaiting Ryle's response, but I was certain he would address the matter independently and instruct Thad to depart in a concise manner. The conduct of adults in private is not my concern, Harry Ryle informed us. Furthermore, Mr. Thomas, if your wife is dissatisfied with your performance in the bedroom, do not blame me. If she seeks gratification elsewhere, there are numerous disgruntled spouses at the club, some of whom have returned for the special attention my staff provides them. If you are aware of this, you should be. Harry then made a winking gesture, indicating that he wanted to convey something further, but Ted held his wrist and advised him to remain calm and allow him to address the situation. Harry, you are making the assumption that this incident occurred without the owner's knowledge. That is a significant assumption. Ted then proceeded to pull out a DVD player and place it on Harry's desk. He then pressed play and aimed the screen at Harry, who appeared displeased with what he saw in the video. Before Harry could respond, Thad interjected, stating that Harry had knowingly taken advantage of a member of the club, along with his colleague, Mrs. Susan Thomas. Thad informed the silent Mr. Ryle that if word of this incident were to spread, it would cause significant distress to the husbands of the other club members who were paying dues. He added that he would need to subpoena everyone who was present in the locker room on that day. Ted interjected, speaking as though he were recounting a story. Additionally, there is the matter of privacy, as filming would occur in a locker room. Harry, when I am finished, your club will no longer have the same reputation, and your financial resources may be significantly diminished. Ted added, attempting to persuade him, here's the deal, we want a favorable offer from you, and we want it promptly. Doing so could. Ted concluded the discussion while we observed Harry Riley's deliberations. Ted, you continue to exemplify a problematic individual, yet I am unable to refute your assertions. I will respond tomorrow with an offer contingent upon my agreement to return all the tapes and maintain confidentiality. In return, I will dismiss Tony. Harry really dismissed us, and Ted exited the room. He then proceeded to turn off the DVD player with a discernible degree of satisfaction. Harry Ryle, in response to Ted's suggestion, suggested that he go to hell. This was Harry Ryle's sole response. Ted, in turn, departed the room, laughing. As they waited for further developments, Ted informed him that Bill Evans had made an offer of nearly $2 million. Jeff Davis, who had been fired by Bill Evans after giving all his tapes to Evans, lost his job. Evans simply let him go, leaving Davis with few options. I then proceeded to pursue the two men who were with my wife on the night I discovered her with Davis. They were two of Davis's major clients. They were concerned about the potential negative publicity that might result from my actions, and each offered me $1 million to remain silent. Harry Ryle, however, declined to make an offer and suggested we proceeded to litigation, which resulted in a loss of $3 million for him. His club suffered a significant decline in membership, and he was compelled to relinquish his ownership. He likely assumed he could circumvent legal consequences, but the judge was not persuaded by the private locker room footage or the evidence of infidelity. I provided Sue with a house and a vehicle as she desired, and I was not required to pay child support. I only appeared in court on 2 occasions, both times informing her of my belief in her infidelity, which prompted her to become emotional. I was perplexed by her emotional display, given her previous actions. Thanks to Ted's counsel, I found myself in a financially advantageous position. However, the distress of that challenging period still resonates with me. Memories of the numerous trials from that difficult time emerged abruptly, immersing me in their recollection. I was unaware that the restaurant manager was addressing me until I regained my composure. In a flashback, I recall the manager inquiring as to my well-being. I was unsure of the duration of my reverie and shook my head to dispel the haze, returning to the present moment. I apologized for the disruption and explained that I had become engrossed in a past issue. When I saw the group I had come to meet, I excused myself. I thanked the manager once more and proceeded to explain the situation to him. I noticed a curious look on his face, as though he regarded me with the same fascination one might reserve for an elderly person lost in reverie. I made my way directly to my former spouse. The expression on my wife's face indicated that she was surprised. The last time we met, I was overweight with long hair and a beard. I had an old knee injury from baseball, which I used as an excuse at the time. However, I had settled into a comfortable life with her. Now, things were different. I had a shorter haircut, I was fit from regular workouts, and I had my knee fixed. Thanks to the financial assistance from Jeff and Bill's company, my attire was more refined, and I ensured that I presented myself in a respectable manner in public. I decided to break the silence and spoke up first. "You look fantastic today, Susan," I said, almost forgetting how radiant you could be. I deliberately chose my words to elicit a response from her. I was well versed in how to evoke a reaction from her. "My name is Susan Bobby, why?" "Please address me by my name," she retorted, visibly irritated. "I did not call you that name, strumpet. You are well aware of who did. I have long held the opinion that you are better off with that name. I would remind you that I warned you 3 years ago that you had broken my heart. I will always remember you by that name." As the man sitting next to her began to protest and stand up, Sue motioned for him to remain calm. Tears began to form in her eyes, smudging her makeup. Her boyfriend interjected, "Go freshen up, Sue, and fix your face. I'll handle this situation." She stood up, locking eyes with me as I returned a single glance, perhaps revealing the pain I'd carried for 3 years. Her tears flowed even harder, surprising me that she still held any emotion toward me. It was a sense of lingering guilt, likely a combination of both. She stated, "I expect you to be gone when I come back," while tears streamed down her face. She proceeded to the restroom, where I observed a sizable engagement ring on her finger as she wiped her eyes and departed. "You must be Bob Thomas Sue's ex-husband," I inquired, noting the disdain in his voice. "Yes," she replied. "And you must be the new guy she's been dreaming about." Perceiving his irritation, I introduced myself as Sue, the CFO. I informed him that, were I in his position, I would avoid using that term. Despite his reluctance to cause a scene, I stated that I had 3 questions and then I would disappear from his life forever. I then noticed his puzzled look and informed him that I had been in his position before and did not want anyone else to go through what I had. Did I assume that she portrayed me as a bad husband, offensive, neglectful, or a cheater? I mentioned knowing exactly what she had told him, but I am not here to salvage my reputation with you. Honestly, I do not believe that it would make a difference. First, I asked if Sarah still holds her Avon gatherings at her residence on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I assisted Sarah with her home. Regarding sales of home decor, these occur on Mondays and Wednesdays. It seems your memory is a bit off. He retorted, "Okay, then, does she still play tennis on Saturdays?" I pushed, "Does Sue play tennis on Sundays?" "You seem to be forgetting a lot for someone who was married to her for so long." He said triumphantly, "Okay, last question, have you ever checked under the bottom drawer of the dresser in your living room?" He inquired, "Why would I do that?" In response, I enumerated the 3 questions that I had posed to him. "Those are why we are not together anymore. I still have all the leftover divorce paperwork in my office. That includes legal documents, emails from Sarah and the other woman, and hours of videotapes. I've carried them with me for the past 3 years. I thought you should have them." I then produced a worn and folded a document from my wallet. This is what the other woman wrote to Sarah when she inquired about how to terminate our relationship. After reading the letter, I realized that I did not fully comprehend her character and perhaps still do not. However, the situation revolved around you. I handed him the document. I had known Sue for a considerable period and was aware of her routines. She consistently followed the same patterns. She was meticulous, sometimes driving me to distraction. I also had the impression that even with a new partner, she would adhere to her established patterns. I explained that he seemed uncertain about reading the document, but curiosity prevailed. He reached over and accessed the email. I have retained this document for 3 years, occasionally reading it again and attempting to enhance my personal qualities to the extent that no woman would ever allege such things about me again. The email affected me in a significant manner, which is why I have retained it. It is the same email I referenced earlier in my account. Peter read the letter at a slow pace and then placed it on the table. He promptly procured a pen and wrote a note on it. To my surprise, he abruptly departed from the restaurant without any final words or expressions of gratitude. His demeanor remained stoic and unchanging. I leaned over to ascertain what he had written. He had written on the old email, "I'll be home soon. Hang tight. I'll give you a call in 15 minutes. I just need to check under the bottom drawer of my living room dresser. Back soon." Peter, I sensed, grasped the truth, even if he was not thrilled about it. It seemed that I had hit too close to home on all 3 matters. The email appeared to be the tipping point, and he needed to confirm. I left a note on Sue's table indicating that I would not be staying at the restaurant that evening. I proceeded to the foyer and contacted my client, who was amenable to rescheduling given their existing delay. Before departing, I took one final glance at the table where Sue was seated. She returned and noticed the email and note that I had left for Peter. Her complexion assumed a pallid hue as she became aware of the contents of her former email and Peter's missive. On the occasion of my last encounter with my spouse, she was observed to be in a state of such distress that the entire restaurant became the focus of attention. I experienced a degree of empathy for her situation, yet simultaneously, I was characterized by a sense of detachment. This marked the conclusion of our interaction. I remain uncertain as to whether Peter discovered something beneath the bottom drawer of the dresser. Sue's tears seemed to indicate that he might have done so.